And I think, come on, Katie, these women are talking about not seeing their children for the next 30 odd years, and you're going to be home in 2 weeks and you're going to be able to see yours. The women that I met hadn't been given a lot of choices. Women were born into addiction, born into violence. It had never not been present throughout their entire lives. There was a real sisterhood in all of the facilities, and they'd make these makeshift families where the younger ones would become the kids, some of the older ones would be aunts, dads, mothers. During my time in the States, I met so many different women with different backgrounds, different cases, different situations. But I related to so many of them because just like you and I, they're mothers, they're daughters, they're aunts, but they're people who have struggled in life and maybe not had the best start, and things have begun to unravel. Mental health has been an issue, and unlike you or I, they don't have that support network and they don't have that chance to move forward in a safe environment. So it really reminded me how anybody can end up in prison, and that actually to humanise this part of the population is really important to get to the root cause of why people offend in the first place. Because I really felt that on my trip I saw that prison was suitable for some people, and even by their own admission it was the right place for them. But for others it was just a temporary solution, and it really didn't get to that crux of what was going on in their life and how they could be rehabilitated properly. I think 60% of the female population are there on drug-related crimes. So those drug-related crimes could be being exploited and used as a mule, or it could be that the person has addiction themselves, and that addiction as a result of childhood trauma. It's a very small percent of the female population that are there for violent crimes. So anyone that thinks you go into prison and meet tons of Myra Hindleys and Rose Wests, you just don't. Where some people might feel, well, I don't care what happens to people in prison, they've made their choice. But the women that I met hadn't been given a lot of choices. Women were born into addiction, born into violence. It had never not been present throughout their entire lives. It's a generational cycle of addiction, but it's also a generational cycle of incarceration. So I would be interviewing somebody in a cell and they would say, oh, 6 cells down is my mum, and on the mental health wing is my grandma, and actually my daughter was arrested and is sat in county jail waiting for her sentencing. And you would think, something's not working here. And you know, if you look at statistics, if you have a disconnect with your mum in the first 2 to 3 years of your life, you are statistically more likely to go to jail. So it's not just about the women that I met, it's about the families on the outside. And ultimately, you know, I went to so many different facilities, not just prisons. I went to county jails, detox facilities, paroles, probations, Christian missionaries. And in every single setting, the same common thread is that the child and the baby is always the victim. For a lot of the women, this wasn't their first pregnancy, you know, and they had other children on the outside that they were literally trying to mother via a payphone for the next 7 to 8 years. And it was really stressful for them, but also the people they'd left behind. And now they were having this pregnancy behind bars, and they had the comparison of what previous pregnancies had been like. But also you would meet other women that would say, prison saved my life. All my other pregnancies in the free world were chaotic, were traumatic. I was living on the streets, I was homeless. You know, you can't imagine what it's like to be pregnant and homeless, and actually prison being the better option. And some people saying, my family don't worry about me when I'm in prison because it's the safest I can ever be. And I think that was tinged with as much sadness as the people that weren't enjoying their stay and this wasn't a normal pregnancy for them. And we were there for 6 months, so you know, I got close to a lot of the women and sort of took on some of their stories and found out about their past. And it was funny because I'm a mum, and every day the topic was, I miss my children, I want to see them. So it made me miss my own, and sometimes I would feel a bit down, and then I'd think, come on, Katie, these women are talking about not seeing their children for the next 30 odd years, and you're going to be home in 2 weeks and you're going to be able to see yours. So I suppose it was a bit of a conflict. You would feel guilty for having these feelings of missing your own family. I became like the women where, you know, people would be so blasé and they'd lift up their top and show you like these scars, and they were pregnant out here, and the scars were where they'd been shot in the stomach previously, and they were just sort of, you know, really nonchalant about that. And I started to get like that because I was hearing so much day in, day out. But there were some real moments of light and hope. There was a real sisterhood in all of the facilities, and they'd make these makeshift families where the younger ones would become the kids, some of the older ones would be aunts, dads, mothers, and they would become so resourceful. So they, you know, we would talk about femininity and being a woman, and you know, I'd ask them questions like, what do you do about your top lip hair? What do you do about your eyebrows? And they would break cotton off their trousers and thread each other. They would do cooking using the hot water tap in their cell, cutting up chicken. With the one with the longest nails would cut up the chicken, and they would sing. Like, some of them had beautiful voices, and they would sing and put on concerts together to entertain each other. So there was this amazing resilience amongst them. You know, life had been cruel, and they had at points felt hopeless, but there was still like a fight left in a lot of the women, and I found that quite inspiring, you know, meeting people that will make the best of this, whatever that is, when they had very little.